time for this nation to take a clearly leading role in space achievement, which in many ways may hold the key to our future on Earth.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Today is a day for mourning and remembering. Nancy and I are pained to the core by the tragedy of the Shuttle Challenger.
The following program may contain coarse language, adult themes, and bad attempts at humor. Listener discretion is advised.
What is President Trump's goal? What is his vision? He wants to put an American flag on Mars.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
I am JEFF, and let's see if I'm coming through here, because it doesn't look like one thing's activated. Let me fix this real quick here. Okay, it doesn't look like it's going to be fixable on that side. So I'm hoping you all can hear me okay tonight. So, I am JEFF. Sorry, it's been a while since I've done a show. You can follow me over on X at @ACosmicBard. And this is the Lost Wanderer podcast for August 23rd, 2026. Already off to a rough start. What can I say? Just trying to make sure everything is lined up and working okay, and hitting a few roadblocks, but that's okay. That's what part of live radio is all about. So, what can we do here? Well, we're going to start out the show this badly. There's only one way. There's only one way to correct this. And that's with our lead story tonight.
And now, Assholes in Space!
China is asshole! China is asshole! China is asshole! China is asshole!
Yes, they are. And how are they so this episode? Well, let's talk about it. Now, for many of the listeners of the show, Assholes in Space, it normally waits until closer to the end of the first half, but China and Russia have been busy while the Lost Wanderer podcast was away. They brought us an exploding rocket, 2 recovery launches, an ambitious trip to the moon, and a Russian rocket factory being hit by cruise missiles. We have a special thing that we've never really implemented on this show, but that is enough material to set off this alarm and let the a-holes lead the show. So China started this run on August 10th with the launch of a Long March 7A rocket from the Weichang Space Launch Site on Hainan Island. The rocket was carrying the Xinjiang 4B communication satellite, believed to be heading toward geostationary transfer orbit. About 85 seconds after liftoff, the upper portion of the rocket bent backward and the vehicle exploded, producing a large fireball and scattering debris while it was still climbing through Earth's atmosphere. Now, the Long March 7A normally fires for almost 3 minutes before its 4 side boosters and core stage separate. This one never even came close. There is something interesting about this. The rocket and its satellites were lost during the initial power climb, and the China state-owned aerospace company had not released an explanation when the first reports were published. This was the 18th launch of the Long March 7A and only its second failure. The rocket's first flight in 2020 also ended in an explosion, although that incident followed first stage separation and was eventually traced to an engine malfunction. The August 10th failure happened much, much earlier, so there is no reason yet to assume the same problem has returned. There is, however, enough evidence for us here at the Lost Wonder program to update the Chinese dead cow counter. Now, the previous total was 51. Now, it should be obvious that no real official total has ever been counted, or even connected to this single explosion, but let's face it, official confirmation has never been the foundation of the Chinese dead cow counter. A Chinese rocket exploded, debris came back towards Earth, and some of it may have landed in an area theoretically accessible to some sort of living cow. So next time we air this segment, you will see the total be notched up to 53. Pending any discovery of additional wreckage, eyewitness testimony, or as a suspiciously rocket-shaped hole in a pasture. Now, because the rocket did launch from Hainan Island, I have also reviewed our counting standards here and determined I never made a differentiation between land and sea cows. So sea cows are also now eligible to be included in the counter. I will not allow geography to create a loophole in measurements this rigorous. Now, the China space program did not spend much time mourning the rocket. 6 days after the explosion, a Long March 12 lifted off from the Hainan Commercial Space Launch Center and placed 24 internet satellites in the low Earth orbit. Less than 24 hours later, a Long March 2C launched from the Tianwan Satellite Launch Center, roughly 1,300 miles north of Wenchang, and delivered the SEO satellite for the United Arab Emirates into its planned orbits. Fun stuff. So neither successful launch used the same type of rocket that failed. The Long March 12 is a newer two-stage vehicle built primarily for heavier payloads traveling to low Earth or sun-synchronous orbit, and the smaller Long March 2C has been flying since about 1982 and handles lighter payloads. Now, the next mission for Wenchang is considerably larger. China plans to launch Chang'e E7 on August 24th, though I'm not sure that is going to happen anymore, because there was some news that didn't make show prep time. And that will be aboard a Long March 5 rocket. The mission is heading for the lunar South Pole with an orbiter, a lander, a rover, and a small hopping spacecraft traveling together. Once again, I called some breaking news right before I went live that may have been pushed back, but I don't have a confirmed date yet. Now, once it does go after reaching the moon, the orbiter will spend several months conducting observations before releasing the lander for a touchdown, attempting near the end of the year. The planned landing site is along the edge of Shackleton Crater, close to the lunar South Pole. Parts of that region receive long periods of sunlight, while the interiors of nearby craters remain in a permanent shadow. Now, the hopper will travel from illuminated terrain into those darker areas and search for water ice. It uses an active shock absorption system designed to handle sloped landing sites, allowing it to reach places that would be difficult for an ordinary rover to explore. A solar power rover can drive into permanently shattered crater, but convincing it to, maybe get out of that sunless now crater, a little more complicated of a sales pitch, and even the Chinese are not that stupid when it comes to this stuff. Now, we have to remember, scientists have found strong evidence for lunar water ice through orbital observations, but no mission has fully measured the deposits inside these craters. Chang'e E7 will search the surface and venture into the shadows where extremely low temperatures may have preserved ice for billions upon billions of years. Future crews could melt this ice for things such as drinking water, maybe separate it into oxygen for breathing and using its hydrogen and oxygen as rocket propellant. A usable source near the South Pole would reduce the amount of material that must be launched from Earth, and that will, help make longer stays on the moon easier to support. Now, nobody is building a lunar gas station next Tuesday, but the people hoping to build one eventually would like to know where the fuel is buried. Now, Chang'e 7 will also carry several international experiments. Italy has supplied a laser reflector for the lander. Bahrain and Egypt jointly developed a hyperspectral camera for the orbiter. Thailand, there's a name we don't mention much on the show. Thailand contributed a detector for high-energy particles, but still can't tell me what a ladyboy is. And Switzerland provided an instrument for measuring Earth's radiation from the moon. Now, a wide-field optical camera developed through ILOA Hawaii and the University of Hong Kong will attempt to capture color images of the Milky Way from the lunar surface. The lander will also carry a Russian instrument designed to study lunar dust and plasma environment. Now, it seems Russia may be losing friends here on Earth, but apparently it can still get science package on board a Chinese moon lander. Who would have thunk it? Well, the mission supports China's plan to land astronauts on the moon by 2030. Chang'e 8 is expected to follow around 2028 and test methods for building structures with the lunar soil. Yes, 3D printing for you that do not know. Now, before any of this does happen, the Long March 7 must leave Wenchang intact, perform its job, and send Chang'e 7 toward the moon. The launch is scheduled only 2 weeks after another large rocket exploded, so we're going to have some fun with this one. Let's see what happens, shall we? I don't know what the markets are betting-wise, but hey, we can bet on sports. We got to start betting on this stuff, and I need to be, sponsored here. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Now, that said, while China has prepared for its moon mission, Russia has received a reminder that its space program remains tied directly to something it cannot seemingly win, and that's the war in Ukraine. On the 15th of August, Ukrainian forces attacked the Progress Rocket and Space Center in Samara with domestically produced FP-5 Flamingo cruise missiles. Ukrainian President, the Midget, confirmed the use of the missiles, and Ukraine's military reported a direct hit followed by a fire at the facility. Now, the Progress Center assembles the Soyuz 2, which is Russia's primary launch vehicle for military and civilian missions. Soyuz rockets carry satellites into orbit and remain part of the system used to send crews toward the ISS. The factory we should also mention, manufactures military spacecraft and produces the newer Soyuz 5 rocket. Open source reports suggest that the clean room used for avionics may have been damaged, although the full extent of this strike remains unknown at this time. A fire at the facility could represent anything from damage to an outer building to the loss of flight hardware that was already moving through the production line itself. Missed launch dates will eventually reveal more than what the first photographs and government statements have said thus far. Now, Russia was already, they were already reporting to have a limited supply of completed Soyuz rockets before the attack. Damage to aviation production or final assembly could delay military satellites, civilian missions, or crew flights. Some of those, which on occasion still carry Americans. Now, the same production line serves all of them, so the consequences will depend on which part of the factory was actually hit and how quickly Russia can replace the damaged equipment. Progress was not targeted merely because it has the word space in its name. Russia uses rockets and satellites to support military communication, surveillance, and other operations connected to the war. Ukraine has been striking factories, airfields, and industrial sites that help Russia continue those programs. And the Flamingo missiles gives it the range to reach facilities far beyond the border. Now, the complication is that, Soyuz also supports missions unrelated to that invasion. So the main takeaway here is the Chinese dead cow counter will now stand at 53, and we will watch Chang'e 7 carefully to see whether China's next departure from Wenchang ends at the moon instead of 85 seconds in the flight. We will also watch Russia's Soyuz schedule for the first signs that the strike in Samara reached something the factory cannot, quickly replace. Now, From a rocket factory hit on the ground, we're going to move to Rocket Lab, which would prefer not to have a permanent rocket factory or even a permanent launch pad if everything can be packed in shipping containers and taken along. So Rocket Lab has looked at the traditional launch pad with its permanent towers, fuel systems, and inconvenient attachment to that one piece of ground. And they went, not good enough, and decided to make the whole thing portable. Its new system is called GHOST, short for Global Hypersonic and Orbital Spacecraft Technology. Okay, I can see the GHOST part. Now, rockets, launch infrastructure, ground support equipment, and range control systems are packed inside standard shipping containers. Rocket Lab can move these containers to a prepared location, assemble the equipment, and launch either an Electron orbital rocket or its HASTE suborbital relative. Now, it's important to note here, Electron carries smaller satellites in orbit. HASTE is built from the same basic rocket design, but follows suborbital paths for hypersonic and missile defense testing. Rocket Lab already operates in New Zealand and at Wallops Island, Virginia. GHOST will allow it to build temporary launch facilities elsewhere without starting every new spaceport as a multi-year concrete pouring festival. Now, the first major use will be at Pacific Spaceport Complex on Kodiak Island in Alaska. A $266 million Space Force contract calls for 12 missile defense test launches, with options for up to 6 more. Most are expected to use HASTE, and Rocket Lab plans to install 2 GHOST pads in Alaska. Kodiak already has a spaceport and plenty of open territory. It also has one of the world's largest populations of brown bears, giving range safety officers an entirely new category of unauthorized launch spectator and potential lost wanderer tallies. But now the spaceport has hosted nearly 3 dozen missions since 1998, most of them of military suborbital flights, so HASTE will not really be a new neighbor. And Rocket Lab is also building the spacecraft those launches are intended to protect against threats. The Space Force awarded the company another $397 million to design, manufacture, and launch a fleet of threat-tracking satellites under the Space-Based Airborne Moving Target Indicator Program. Travis Shakehouse, nice one, Aggie. Now, Rocket Labs calls these spacecrafts flatelites. F-L-A-T-E-L-L-I-T-E-S. Their thin shape allows several to be stacked inside a rocket fairing, much like Starlink satellites aboard Falcon 9. The satellites will carry high-band, low-latency communication equipment and sensors intended to track airborne threats in real time. The Flatelites award is Rocket Lab's largest defense contract of the year. It joins a $190 million agreement for 20 HASTE flights and a $90 million contract for 2 satellites in geostationary orbit. Rocket Lab's 4 announced American Defense Awards during 2026 now total $943 million. So the company that became known for launching small satellites from New Zealand is now building rockets, manufacturing military spacecraft, operating hypersonic test missions, and packing launch pads in the shipping containers. If the plan works, Rocket Lab can build the satellite, provide the rocket, and bring the spaceport with it. Kind of cool when you think about it that way. Now this next story, we'll see if we can get through. Because with the EP no longer being the EP of the show while he's off, doing that whole college studying engineer thing that he's doing, well, whatever, I'm not good enough. By the way, go Goats. This story probably would have earned a thumbs up from him. See, NASA canceled one project, kept the useful pieces, and found him another job. It's the Rocket Unemployment Program. It's awesome. What happened is NASA canceled Gateway, the space station that would have orbited the moon as part of Artemis. The Habitation and Logistics Outpost, better known as HALO, was already under construction when the agency changed direction. Northrop Grumman is now moving HALO's electrical systems, mechanical connections, and data equipment into a series of lunar infrastructure demonstration missions. The 3 planned missions called LID-1, LID-2, and LID-3, Lunar Infrastructure Demonstration 1, 2, and 3, will test power, thermal control, autonomous operations, communications, and equipment that can carry additional experiments. These systems must operate near the lunar South Pole and survive a lunar night that can last for weeks. I mean, keeping people alive on the moon is difficult. Don't ask me how I know this. Keeping their power systems alive while the sun takes half a month off is where the engineering students are going to earn their ramen, or pizza and ice cream in case of the EP. Now, NASA plans nearly 24 uncrewed lunar missions before astronauts return to the surface on Artemis 4, currently scheduled for late 2028. The demonstrations will gather real performance data before similar equipment is trusted with a crew. Halo may never house astronauts in lunar orbit, but useful parts of it can still support the base those astronauts will eventually need. Now, Artemis engineers are also working on a more personal piece of protection. See, during the uncrewed Artemis 1 mission in 2022, 2 human-shaped test dummies named Helga and Zohar flew around the moon inside Orion. Zohar wore a 57-pound Astrorad radiation vest. Helga made the trip without one, apparently after losing the coin toss. Each dummy carried more than 5,600 radiation sensors. The vest used thousands of small hexagonal rods made from hydrogen-rich plastic, arranged like scales so the garment could bend. Lead works well against some radiation, but can create secondary radiation when struck by high-energy particles. Hydrogen-rich plastic is lighter and does not produce the same neutron spray. So Astrorad places thicker shielding over organs and tissues that are most vulnerable instead of spreading the same protection across the entire body. Researchers calculated that this targeted design reduced exposures about 30% more effectively than uniform shielding using the same mass. Orion did not encounter a major solar storm during Artemis 1, so researchers compared the measurements with known solar particle events. Against a storm like the one recorded in August of 1972, the vest could have reduced the absorbed dose by nearly 60%, equal to removing as much as 193 days of ordinary deep space radiation exposure. Astronauts would wear Astrorad during periods of elevated radiation rather than for an entire mission. It provides protection similar to Orion's storm shelter while still allowing someone to move around the cabin and work, because how dare they get a break? NASA is giving canceled hardware another assignment and tailoring radiation protection to the bodies wearing it. Kind of like that. No problems with this. But SpaceX handled reuse more literally. It dragged an entire Starship out of the Indian Ocean, or is at least trying to. And, they just decided, hey, let's take a 24-day boat ride. Take that, Gilligan. So SpaceX has managed 2 very different demonstrations of rocket reuse during the same week. One involved launching 2 Falcon 9 rockets from opposite American coasts within 38 minutes of each other. The other involved towing said Starship backward toward the Indian Ocean because the enormous thing somehow had survived landing and refused to sink. The first Falcon 9 lifted off from Cape Canaveral at 9:12 p.m. Eastern on August 15th. It carried 8 satellites for Globostar into low Earth orbit. About 8 minutes later, the first stage returned to Cape Canaveral and landed, completing the 14th flight for that particular booster. While the Globostar upper stage was still carrying its satellites toward deployment, another Falcon 9 launched from Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. That rocket left the ground at 9:50 p.m. Eastern, only 38 minutes after the Florida launch, carrying the classified USSF 366 mission for the United States Space Force. Now, of course, SpaceX released very little information about that payload in its webcast ended shortly after the first stage landing. Outside observers believe the mission may involve satellites, oh really, based on the company's Starshield design, but the government has not confirmed nor denied what was aboard or where it was deployed. Now, the second booster did land on the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, about 8.5 minutes after launch, and it was that particular booster's 18th mission. You remember when I started this show, And somewhere along the line, Falcon 9 started doing these things. And I was amazed that the reuse was, they were rated for 10 reuses. And we were joking about how we'd never see it. Now we're in, several 15, 18, in the 20s. Just amazing. Now, the doubleheader beat SpaceX's previous record between orbital launches by 27 minutes and brought the company's 2026 Falcon 9 total to 96. 3/4 of those launches carried Starlink satellites, helping SpaceX, of course, approach 11,000 spacecraft in its broadband constellation. And whether we want to admit it or not, the Falcon 9 has made landing a rocket stage, well, actually routine. That said, Starship remains committed to making recovery look like a maritime emergency assembled for spare equipment and determination. As you may recall, on July 24, Starship's 13th test flight launched from Texas. The upper stage Ship 40 flew through space, released 20 test satellites, survived re-entry, and completed an intact splashdown in the Indian Ocean. A pinpoint splashdown, I should add. Previous Starships had broken apart or exploded after reaching the water. So SpaceX suddenly had a flown spacecraft now worth recovering. So Ship 40 tipped onto its side but continued floating. Rough seas complicated efforts to secure that 170-foot vehicle, and Elon Musk said in early August that recovery was not looking good. The spacecraft, however, remained stubbornly present, apparently unaware that starships are traditionally, they have this habit of, tending to explode before creating all this paperwork and stuff. Now, a recovery vessel eventually towed Ship 40, engine first, for several hundred miles. After approximately 24 days at sea, the spacecraft reached calmer water near Christmas Island. It's a Christmas miracle! Which is, for those that don't know, Christmas Island is an Australian territory in the Indian Ocean. Now, engineers will examine the engines, heat shield tiles, and structure before attempting to return the vehicle to Starbase. An intact spacecraft can reveal damage that cameras and flight data may miss, especially after re-entry and 3 weeks of being used as the world's most expensive buoy. Ship 40 will remain in the water near Christmas Island while engineers decide how to get the spacecraft home safely. We are going to leave it there for now and not mention Orty's brick comment because it is brilliant, but please visit live.listeningpoststudios.com and join in the chat there. You can even post pictures in that chat if you wish. But with that, we're going to take a brief intermission, about 5 minutes or so, and just, if I could do a Casey Kasem voice, I would just simply say, this one goes out to the EP.
I held the weather back while you were learning how to stand. Kept enough light above you, kept the winter from your hands. But every living thing I loved was never mine to keep. Some roots are only waiting for a wider place to reach. Against the walls that once had kept you safe. Saw the room become too small for all the things you meant to chase. There were questions I could answer. There were roads I could not walk. So I taught you how to listen. Then I learned when not to talk. inside you, there will be answers bought and sold. You will bend beneath the weather, you will lose a limb or two, but nothing worth becoming ever grows without breaking through. Someday you may cross this doorway carrying years I never saw, standing where you once stood, reaching, but you will not be small at all. I will see the shape you chose there, every scar and every ring. Know the boy who left my keeping came back as his own thing. Go farther than I followed, grow taller than I knew. Take everything I gave you and make it something new. I will never rest the branches to become the seed I knew. If you have to leave to find yourself, then that is what you do. I held the weather back until you learned the sky. Now take your roots beyond me and grow.
That was Grow Tall, dedicated to the EP. Now, believe it or not, that song came not only from EP going off to college, but from this next story. And, I was always going to read too much into it. I can live with that. Let's face it. I am who I am. And I suspect some of you will as well. Madison Square Park in Manhattan contains 44 species of trees. One of its newest is a slender American sweet gum that looks rather ordinary beside the English elm nearby. But that sweet gum has already traveled farther than any other tree in the park. For its journey began as one of 1,000 seeds carried aboard Artemis 1 in 2022. That uncrewed Orion capsule that we just talked about took them around the moon and brought them home after a voyage of roughly 1.3 million miles. NASA then germinated the seeds and began distributing the trees to schools and parks across the country. The Madison Square Park Conservancy applied for one in 2023 and received its sweet gum in 2025. The tree spent the next year growing quietly before the park introduced it with a birthday party in July. Yes, there was cake, children's artwork, poetry, and foam rockets. Maybe some Chinese should look in the building knows. And although, let's be honest, the damn Canadian wildfire smoke unfortunately kept most of the guests indoors. But the smoke made the tree choice feel strangely appropriate. American sweet gums normally prefer conditions slightly south of New York, but the park selected one because Manhattan's climate is expected to become warmer and wetter. That's what she said. The people planning it were thinking about the place where it could grow, and not only the place where it began. These are not NASA's first moon trees. Apollo 14 astronaut Stuart "Smokey" Roosa carried about 500 seeds around the moon in 1971. Roosa had worked as a smoke jumper before becoming an astronaut, parachuting into remote areas to fight wildfires. Taking tree seeds into space was his love letter to the forest and for future generations. Those seeds returned to Earth and became trees planted around the world. A seed from one of the Apollo-era moon trees was even brought to the birthday party for the new sweet gum, like an older relative showing up to make sure everyone remembered. Yes, I had sex with your grandmother. We started this. See, Orty's not the only one that's Bob Ross. Now, it went further from home than anything its size had any business going, coming back and was placed into someone else's care. For a while, it needed attention, protection, and physical support to keep it upright. A year later, the supports were removed and the tree, well, that tree now stands on its own. And anyone who has helped something grow knows that this is supposed to be the goal. You water it, you protect it from the worst weather, and give it enough room to become what it is going to become. Eventually, if you did your job well, it no longer needs you holding it upright every day. That does not mean the early care disappears. It becomes part of the trunk, the roots, and the way the tree handles the next storm. You may not be standing beside it every moment, but it carries what you gave it into every place it grows. There's a strange mixture of pride and emptiness when the supports come away. The tree is doing exactly what everyone hoped it would do, yet the space beside it suddenly looks different. You can be happy about the growth and still miss the days when leaning towards you was part of its routine. Now the sweet gum is still young. Its branches will spread, its roots will reach farther beneath the park, and most of its life is still ahead of it. The people who cared for it during the first quiet year will not control every season it encounters. They gave it a beginning strong enough to meet those seasons without them. So yes, for now, that little moon tree is rooted in Manhattan, standing without support after a 1.3 million mile trip. We will leave it growing there and turn toward another object that traveled further than expected. A rocky planet with enough mass that it probably should have become something else. And I know some of you got what I just mentioned with that last story, so thank you. Thank you very much. So, GJ523b is an exoplanet about 2.5 times wider than Earth and roughly 23.5 times more massive, because babies got back. Astronomers sometimes call worlds like this mega-Earths, which sounds like a planet that should have its, kind of own cape and fight crime. It's more of an informal label because astronomers have not found enough of them to establish an official class. But they're quick enough to get Pluto off the list, aren't they? NASA's TESSA identified the planet by watching it pass in front of its star. Each transit blocked a small portion of the star's light, allowing researchers to calculate the planet's width. Then they used the WIYN telescope at Kitt Peak in Arizona to measure how strongly its gravity pulled the star back and forth. Combining those measurements gave researchers a radius of about 2.55 times Earth and a mass about 23.5 times greater. Packing that much material onto a planet that size produces a density greater than Earth and leaves little room for a thick atmosphere. So it appears to be mostly rock and metal, which better than country and western. Now, gravity at the surface would be roughly 3.5 times stronger than gravity on Earth. Our moon tree might sprout, but would eventually reconsider the standing tall portion of the segment. Now, its branches would also be less interested in reaching for the sky than negotiating a reasonable settlement closer to the ground. Now, it should be noted this planet circles its star once every 17.75 days. That gives it a year shorter than the recovery voyage of SpaceX's Starship. Although nobody has asked Ship 40 to celebrate Christmas every 2.5 weeks, so I guess there's a little bit of benefit on that. Now, GJ523b belongs to a young planetary system estimated to be about 170 million years old. Its size suggests that it should have followed a very different path. Planets begin by gathering rock and metal and grow into a growing core. Once a core becomes massive enough, its gravity can pull in the hydrogen, helium from the disk of gas surrounding a young star. Models have suggested rapid gas accumulation should begin when a core approaches 20 times Earth's mass, eventually producing something more along the lines of a Neptune or a gas giant. But 523b crossed that threshold without putting on the expected layers of gas. It's a nudist. Who would have thunk? It is the planetary equivalent of reaching the buffet, loading 23 Earths onto one plate, and somehow skipping everything light and fluffy. I mean, there is a carnivore diet, so I guess it's just doing that. The planet may have formed without a large atmosphere that was later stripped away, or maybe it did, by radiation, or maybe there's another violent process taking place. It could also be the product of a collision between two larger planets, combining their rocky interiors while blasting much of their gas into space, kind of like you do when you're out shopping in the grocery store and no one else is down that aisle. You just crop dust. Same premise here. Now, the research has been submitted to the Astronomical Journal and is available as a preprint, so it still has to pass formal peer review. That said, one oversized rocky planet can expose a hole in the model. 20 or 30, well, could show whether mega-Earths actually do follow any sort of pattern. And guess what? It's Sunday. You know what Sunday's for? Well, besides going to church for those that are religious, Sunday is for math. And the universe has given me receipts. So get your pencils out, nerd, because Sunday math is back on the menu. For years, astronomers have looked at distant galaxies and estimated how much stuff was in them by measuring their light. Stars produce light, and driving over there with a bathroom scale kind of remains out of budget right now and capability. The problem is that galaxies are a lot like family reunions. You have a handful of loud, oversized assholes dominating the event while quieter relatives stand around wondering why nobody even remembered their damn name. Now, in a galaxy, those assholes are the massive stars. They are huge, hot, ridiculously bright, maybe not intelligent. They burn through their fuel quickly, make a spectacular mess when they die, and overpower the light coming from the smaller stars. But the little stars are still there. They are simply difficult to see when Chad the blue supergiant is standing in front of them screaming about cryptocurrency. Scientists used the James Webb Space Telescope and the Very Large Telescope to study 9 galaxies from the early universe. Because those galaxies had finished their biggest star-forming periods, researchers could dig through their light for faint fingerprints from smaller stars. And they found them. Let me rephrase that. They found a hell of a lot more than they expected. And sorry about that, Ordy. That was not a shot at you. It really wasn't. Now, astronomers had assumed that galaxies produce stars in roughly the same proportions we see today. Some large, many small, mixed thoroughly and baked, for about 13 billion years, give or take. Apparently, the early universe ignored the recipe. One of those galaxies existed less than 1.5 billion years after the Big Bang. One researcher included all those smaller stars. The galaxy may have contained 4 times the previous estimated stellar mass. Okay, here we go. Here comes the math. Let us pretend the old estimate was 25 billion suns. 25 times 4 gives us 100 billion suns. The difference is 75 billion suns, which means astronomers may have missed 3/4 of the damn galaxy. This is not some sort of rounding error. That is looking at a 4-bedroom house, counting the refrigerator, and deciding nobody lives there. And just to keep the percentage from escaping containment, the new estimate is 400% of the original estimate, but the increase is 300%. Anyone calling it a 400% increase has to stay after class and clean the telescopes. And no, I'm not using telescope as an innuendo here, but it works. The galaxy did not suddenly just become heavier. The weight was always there. She just put it on differently. We were judging the entire place by the bright bastards making the most noise. If other early galaxies contain the same hidden population, astronomers may have underestimated how quickly the young universe assembled stars. Gee, shocker, they got the math wrong again. Smaller stars also live much longer, giving planets more time to form. So, settle down. I know, Avi, not Aggie, Avi Loeb, I know where you're going. It does not mean aliens. We don't need to go down that path. It just means the early universe may have built far more long-lasting solar systems than most people realized. Researchers now plan to look at more galaxies and found out whether this was an oddball or whether we were undercounting the quiet little bastards everywhere, and I can already tell you the answer to that one. They've been miscounting and undercounting. Because scientists think they know the answers when real scientists still search them out. where do we go from here? Well, we just talked about some assholes, right? Asshole planets, assholes fucking up galaxies. So, I thought it obvious because, look, EP may be gone. I still have the brain of a 13-year-old. So, I went, why not, let's talk poop. Space travel has given humanity great questions. Are we alone? Can people live on Mars? What happens when we leave Earth and travel farther than anyone has gone before? And apparently, a question that has been asked recently, why can't astronauts take a decent shit? I wish I was making this story up. This is a legit story from the last 2 weeks. I can give links if anyone's interested. Constipation has become a common problem aboard the ISS for years. At first, you might blame the toilet. Space toilets require hoses, suctions, careful positioning, and, well, some docking level concentration. There is no sitting down with a newspaper and letting nature handle everything that happens. But the problem may begin well before an astronaut straps into the facilities and hopes the payload clears the launch tower. Researchers from NASA and the University of Copenhagen studied 52 astronauts who lived aboard the space station between 2006 and 2018. They examined 488 blood samples collected before, during, and after missions lasting between 2 and 9 months. This is a considerable scientific effort to discover why nobody can drop the kids off at the microgravity pool, if you catch my meaning, Mr. Frodo. The researchers used metabolomics. I know I fucked that word up, which is a way of measuring small molecules in the blood. Those molecules can reveal what the blood is doing, which gut bacteria are eating, and what those bacteria are actually producing. Within weeks of arriving in space, the astronauts showed increased levels of compounds associated with bacteria fermenting protein in the colon. These changes continued throughout their missions, then largely disappeared within days of returning to Earth. Now, on Earth, bacteria in your colon prefer fiber and carbohydrates. When digestion slows down, these carbohydrates may be used before everything reaches the end of the line. Look, I'm trying to be as delicate as I can. I know it's not working. In other words, the buffet runs out of bread, so the tiny bastards start eating the meat. I'm not going to apologize. I'm not. I tried to make the first show back fun, okay? Now, this creates different metabolic byproducts, including ammonia and hydrogen sulfide. Hydrogen sulfide is the gas that smells like rotten eggs, because apparently being constipated in a sealed metal can was not enough of a morale problem. But scientists believe microgravity may be slowing the movement of food through the intestines. Gravity normally helps encourage everything through the digestive tract. Remove the gravity, and the human gastrointestinal system apparently responds by putting operations on a reduced weekly schedule. Now, to be clear, researchers did not directly measure how quickly food traveled through the astronauts. Nobody swallowed a tracking beacon and waited for Houston to announce some kind of splashdown. The slower movement is inferred from the changes found in their blood. Diet probably contributed, but it did not explain most of the effect. Differences in caffeine, fish, and fat intake accounted for less than 1/3. Something about spaceflight itself seems to be backing up the launch schedule. For a short mission, constipation is uncomfortable, embarrassing, and a bad way to spend an afternoon with, 6 other coworkers floating 10 feet away. But for a mission to Mars, it could become a genuine health issue. Increased protein fermentation reduces compounds associated with negative health effects, and astronauts may spend years away from Earth without access to a pharmacy, a private bathroom, or the sweet downward pull of home. Now, one possible solution is more fiber, particularly slowly fermented carbohydrates. That would give gut bacteria something useful to consume for longer, reducing the amount of protein they break down. So here we thought the future interplanetary travel will depend on advanced rockets, radiation shielding, closed-loop life support, and making sure everyone eats their oatmeal to keep the mission moving. I'm not even going to be sorry. I'm not sorry. I'm not. You know what you signed up for when you turned into this show. Just saying. Now, we do have one little story about Cards Against Humanity. I know. Where Where do we go? Well, look, we just talked about poop. So now we're going to talk about Cards Against Humanity. The company that sells offensive fill-in-the-blank cards has decided the world needs a monument insulting Elon Musk. Not because the monument will accomplish anything or improve anything. It will, however, attract attention, sell expansion decks, and let people pay Cards Against Humanity for participating in a so-called joke. Now, for those that don't remember, this did actually start out as a legitimate property dispute. Cards Against Humanity owns land near SpaceX's Starbase facility in Texas. The company bought it in 2017 during its Cards Against Humanity Saves America campaign. Not sure why these anti-African American campaigns started and that was allowed, but hey, A, Elon is an African American. B, yeah. Anyway, 150,000 customers paid $15 apiece, helping purchase the property and hire an eminent domain law firm to interfere with construction of President Trump's border wall. Now, years later, the SpaceX expanded Starbase. Cards Against Humanity claimed the rocket company began using its land for gravel, tractors, and other things. If someone dumps equipment on your property, you have every right to be angry. I'm not upset with them about that. You also have a legal system for this situation. Cards Against Humanity used it. The company sued SpaceX for $15 million in 2024. SpaceX settled the case in 2025, removed the equipment, and cleaned up the property. Problem addressed. Property cleared. Lawsuit settled. That should have been the end. No. The surrounding area incorporated as the city of Starbase in 2025, bringing the Cards Against Humanity property inside the city limits. Cards Against Humanity responded by announcing plans for something it calls the Elon Musk is a sad little bitch with no friends monument. The company says the monument will force Musk into a moment of introspective. Really? Anyway, I am sure Elon Musk will glance at the monument, reconsider his decision to become the person Cards Against Humanity believes he should be. Or he'll buy a bigger monument against them or buy them outright and burn all the cards. I said there is no final design yet. Cards Against Humanity is asking the public to join the design committee for $10. $10. Which one's the asshole here, Elon or Cards Against Humanity? This is not courageous activism. Yes, SpaceX allegedly trespassed. Cards Against Humanity sued. SpaceX settled and cleaned up the property. The company received a resolution to its actual complaint. Everything after this is just performance and marketing and a money grab. The monument will not protect anybody's land. It will not improve environmental oversight around Starbase. It will not change SpaceX's launch operations or help the surrounding community. It will not even tell us anything new about Elon Musk because opinions about him are already available in industrial-sized quantities. It will give Cards Against Humanity another product to promote, another mailing list to build, and another reason to keep its name circulating online. They are not taking down a powerful, evil corporation. They are another corporation turning political resentment and personal insult into money. I said what I said. So after tonight's launches, explosions, and train and orbital constipation, the sky has decided to finish the show properly. This is your celestial... that's not loading. The celestial forecast for August 23rd through September 5th. All times stated are on the correct coast. The main event arrives Thursday night, August 27th, when the full moon passes through Earth's shadow and gives North and South America a deep partial lunar eclipse. Now, the faint outer shadow begins at 9:23 Thursday evening. The visible part begins at 10:33, when Earth's darker central shadow starts crawling across the lunar surface. Maximum eclipse arrives at 12:12 Friday morning. Approximately 93% of the moon's diameter will be inside Earth's shadow. It will not quite become a total eclipse, but most of the lunar surface should darken to a rusty copper color, leaving one bright edge behind. So I guess your lunar eclipse is rimming. The partial phase ends at 1:51, and the last faint shading disappears at about 3:01 in the morning. You will not need eclipse glasses. It is safe to watch, although binoculars will make Earth's curved shadow easier to see. The moon officially reaches full phase 6 minutes after maximum eclipse at 12:18 Friday morning. Now, you have to understand something too. Even though EP is gone, I'm still going to do this part. One Ojibwa name for the moon is Minu Mini Gizus. Minu Mini Gizus, the grain or wild rice moon. The name reflects a season when Manamine, wild rice, is ready for harvesting. Now, Venus will also remain the easiest planet to find. Look low in the west-southwest shortly after sunset for the brightest object in that part of the sky. And if you're awake before sunrise, Mars is climbing higher in the east, while Jupiter is beginning to return very low along the event horizon. Saturn will be farther west and higher in the sky by then. The Augurid meteor shower runs from August 28th through September 5th and peaks through the night of August 31st into September 1st. This is really a minor shower, usually producing only a handful of meteors under good conditions. Look northeast before dawn and keep your expectations reasonable. It's a meteor shower, not Starlinks. So that is your celestial forecast. Keep looking up, please. So that closes tonight's transmission. Thank you for tuning in whenever, wherever, and why ever you do. Coming up next is Sunday Night with Alan Ray. Special thanks to NASA, SpaceX, Space.com, Ars Technica, NASA Spaceflight, Popular Mechanics, and everyone out there working to keep humanity's eyes pointed toward the stars. But before we go and close everything down for the evening, we do need a quick checkup on the crew. Though EP may be away at school, he is still part of this mess, whether he wants to or not. He put it on his resume. He's part of the team. The ship's computer is probably making some really funky noise right about now, and somehow I'm still able to fly this damn thing. Not sure how any of that happens. But anyway, this has been the Lost Wanderer podcast. Thank you.
Universe is a pretty big place. If it's just us, seems like an awful waste of space. And space is big. Really big.